Good afternoon, dear friends. Today, I will tell you about a movie in which a student tried to seduce her teacher and ruined his family. Enjoy the movie. Cairo recently turned 18. Her parents love to travel abroad, leaving her to live alone in a large house with literature as her only companion to keep boredom at bay. She has one dream: to be loved. Today, something new will happen in her life. She will meet a fellow writer, teacher Jonathan, who has found inspiration in this remote town. Cairo arrives for class earlier than anyone else, which surprises Jonathan, and he asks where she lives. They share stories about their lives. Jonathan is amazed that Cairo has read the entire curriculum. Cairo jokingly replies that she likes it a bit tougher. Then Vinny enters the room and takes her friend away for a talk. While they are gone, Jonathan browses through Cairo's books. He is interrupted by Boris, who immediately realizes that Jonathan is reading a book because its plot is very vulgar, something not typically chosen by boys. Coincidentally, Cairo enjoys reading a book written by Jonathan. He lives with his wife Beatrice, who is also a writer. He mentions that his student is reading his book. The duo begins to dance, prompted by their discussion, but a call from Emmy interrupts them. A new day begins, and the teachers are relaxing, sitting on a bench and drinking coffee. Boris asks if there are ghosts living in the forest. Just then, Cairo emerges from the forest and approaches the teachers directly. Boris offers some cookies, while Jonathan can't take his eyes off Cairo. Later, Vinny tries to catch Boris's attention, openly expressing her interest in their conversation. Cairo calls her obsessed. After classes, the friends gather together. Cairo admits she's struggling to find a topic for her next book. Vinny suggests experiencing something that could help inspire a theme, such as intrigue with the teachers. The problem is that none of them have had any serious relationships. Vinny laughs, wishing her first date would be with Boris, and suggests that Cairo should realize Mr. Jonathan is looking at her in a special way. But Cairo denies it, spending the rest of the day reading Jonathan's book. During class, they can't stop looking at each other. Jonathan asks her to come to him after classes, while Cairo keeps thinking about capturing all his attention. Later, Jonathan decides to dance a little, but he is distracted by Cairo, who promises not to reveal his passions to anyone. Jonathan suggests going to a poetry club, hoping something might surprise her. He has read her latest work and really liked it. Cairo is embarrassed and explains what her piece was about. Jonathan wants her to write a story in the style of her favorite author. Cairo accepts the challenge, adding that she has read his entire book, after which she repeats some phrases that she particularly liked. Jonathan doesn't even know how to respond. Cairo breaks the awkward silence and apologizes. Just then, Vinny enters the room, and the duo ends their conversation. That same day, the teachers and Beatrice visit a cafe where Vinny works, and Boris keeps teasing her. Meanwhile, Beatrice is curious about the beauty of the girl who read Jonathan's book. He responds that she is very smart and unique. Beatrice then declares that Jonathan is not truly a writer, having chosen the teaching profession instead, as he hasn't written another book since that day. The next day, Cairo attends a writer's club and feels that this day will be very significant for her. Jonathan is very pleased to see her. Then, a young man steps onto the stage and begins to read his work. Jonathan listens attentively, but Cairo is completely captivated by Jonathan. The next morning, Cairo brings the teachers coffee, and Boris shares his cookies. Cairo wonders why Boris makes such tasty cookies but doesn't tell anyone. He could sell them, and Vinny could design the logo. The girls visit Jonathan, who mentions that he plans to go on vacation with his wife. Vinny notices how nicely the duo interacts. When the teacher leaves, she suggests that Cairo make the first move and seduce Jonathan. Their conversation is interrupted by Boris, who has decided to sell his cookies. Vinny quickly joins their team, asking for his phone number to assist with the business. That same day, Cairo called Jonathan, who promised to visit her before his departure. Cairo reflects that when love is true, it is quiet and inevitable. A few hours later, Jonathan arrives at Cairo's place, and she steps out of the house dressed in a white dress. All Jonathan can do is stand and watch her walk toward him. Cairo stops and asks him to come closer, but Jonathan remains motionless, prompting Cairo to take the first step and initiate a kiss. Upon returning home, he continues to receive messages from Cairo, which annoy Beatrice. This forces Jonathan to retreat to the shed, where he starts reading Cairo's new book. Engrossed in the story, he imagines that they are the main characters and, unable to resist, he succumbs to temptation. A new day dawns, and Cairo notices something odd about Jonathan's behavior. She asks what's wrong. Jonathan replies that she needs to choose a new author. She states that he had asked her to write a book about a topic she knows well. Jonathan questions whether she truly understands it. Cairo responds that it's about them, noting his embarrassment, and adds that it's about two similar people defying social constraints. Jonathan still finds the book too mature. Cairo is sure he's just scared, and they are no longer strangers. Jonathan tries to explain that she is his student and he is the teacher, but Cairo still seeks acknowledgement that her work is good. She accuses Jonathan of not wanting to admit it, calling him excessive but potentially much better without his ambitions, though currently he is irresponsible. Before leaving, she drops her story in the administration's mailbox. In the evening, the friends gathered. Vinny asked whether Cairo liked Jonathan. Cairo called him a sushi imitation with dressing, but admitted she still loved him. At that time, Beatrice learned that one of his students had written something, but Jonathan wouldn't admit who the story was about. Beatrice managed to persuade Jonathan to share the story. Cairo suggested that Vinny write to Boris, which she did. Meanwhile, Boris had come to visit Jonathan's family. Beatrice noticed Boris was texting someone but didn't share any details. The conversation began to shift, and Boris put away his phone. At the same time, Jonathan received a call from the administration accusing him of inappropriate behavior with a student. He realized that if the student could prove something had occurred between them, he would lose his job. Beatrice added that it wasn't just his job at stake and asked him to tell the truth. However, Jonathan swore that nothing had happened between them. The next day, Cairo skips classes, and Vinny looks very confused. She tries to make Jonathan feel guilty, but he appears extremely aloof. Later, Cairo goes to the principal and recounts their adventures, forcing Jonathan to defend himself. He is lucky that their stories match. When asked the final question, Cairo responds that nothing happened that she disliked. Obviously, Jonathan does not know what she answered, and this question greatly perplexes him. During the break, Boris realizes that Jonathan has fallen for Cairo, and he is unfortunate not to recognize the boundary that shouldn't be crossed. This is precisely why he ended up in such a predicament. When Beatrice returns home, she poses her own questions. Beatrice does not believe his lies, and Jonathan cannot deny that there was a spark between him and Cairo. This was the last straw. Beatrice decides to file for divorce. Vinny approaches Cairo and asks her not to harm Jonathan, as it would ruin his life merely for the sake of revenge because he rejected her. Vinny declares that she will defend Jonathan and assert that Cairo is lying. Cairo quickly responds that Vinny will not be able to do that, as she has compromising information on both Vinny and Boris. When Cairo finishes writing her book about herself and Jonathan, the movie ends. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Let us know in the comments how you rate this movie. If you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell. See you very soon. Goodbye.